I also want to take this time to acknowledge the stakeholders. As I look around the room, I see stakeholders from different sectors. Some of you farmers, some of you fisherfolk, some of you representing agencies that do research, some of you representing universities, some of you representing businesses that all thrive on the basis of agriculture. And if we take the time to understand that, we get down to the importance of why we're here today. You see, I myself saw that some years ago. And I had a very awakening moment when I recognized that St. Kitts and Nevis, as small as we think we are, spends upward of $100 million on food. And coming from a background of being an entrepreneur, that, of course, was an exciting prospect. Because it means then, if we currently spend over $100 million, there's a market of over $100 million that one can tap into. And as we stand here today, talking about CARICOM's 25 by 2025 agenda, our food bill stands at $190 plus million. $190 plus million, closer to $200 million. And if we do a simple mathematical equation, we recognize that 25% of that is somewhere near $50 million. And the essence of what we are here discussing today is how we can share $50 million amongst all of them. But of course, that $50 million is not just cash in hand. It requires your work, your effort, and your dedication. But ultimately, with that, there's a guaranteed $50 million that's being spent annually that should go and be shared amongst all. My job here as the Minister of Agriculture is to ensure that that $50 million is going to you. But how do we do that? We must ensure that our people have the competence. And so, when I just got back from Costa Rica, and I want to say thank you to AICA for extending an invitation to taking me to Costa Rica. And your hospitality, again, I'm grateful. And while I was in Costa Rica, I visited CATI, famous university that's driving agricultural research throughout not only the region of the Caribbean, but also the Americas. And one of the things I was astonished by is the amount of work that is going on at CATI in driving research in resilience to pests, drought, enhancing our food so that it is more productive for our people. But one of the things that I was highly disappointed is that I learned about CATI on this trip. And what does that mean? We are somehow disconnected from the good work that is going on one end, and that reaching our people. And sometimes it's only in these travels that you recognize how to bridge the gaps. And so I have extended an invitation to the director of CATI, who has graciously accepted. And we are now making arrangements to have him come in and discuss the way forward in agriculture with our people. Because you see, CATI is not just driving agriculture for the Caribbean. Where Mexico is, where Belize is, and all of the countries that we recognize as advanced agricultural countries, even Costa Rica, CATI is part of that evolution. And what will it mean to have somebody like that come to St. Kitts Nevis and impart knowledge to our people? It means then that the acumen of our farmers will be improved. Our farmers will be better able to harness that $50 million. The selection of crops, the idea of how to structure agriculture businesses, the importance of establishing and structuring cooperatives, the idea of how to access financing and ensure that your books and everything are up to date, How do you incorporate our tourism sector into your agriculture? These are the things that I am trying to do. Because there's no question the $50 million is there to be achieved. The question is, are we ready? Do we have the requisite skills to attack that market? And sometimes I recognize, as I study this agriculture sector, that in some cases we may not. We are, of course, burdened with the idea of the monkeys. And I'm happy to note that we have been looking at that issue and we have been seeing some areas that we may be able to manage that. We are also in a period of extreme drought. And the truth is, this is not a St. Kitts and Nevis problem. It is a hemispheric problem. And this problem is affecting many farmers. But again, we have done what we can do, and we have sat with the Water Services Department, and we are now looking at some remedies. And I'm happy to note again, there's a positive outlook for water provision to farmers. We also have issues of connecting with markets. And in my time traveling, I have sat with ministers from the Virgin Islands. I've sat with ministers from St. Martin. I've sat with ministers from Barbados. I've sat with ministers from the OECS. And we have been structuring a plan to ensure that not only that their goods could come into St. Kitts where they are producing, but ensure that our goods can go into their countries as well. This is just but some of the work that we have been doing. But again, do we have the supply of goods to export at this point? And sadly, in many cases, the answer is no. Because one of the things that we are burdened by is an inconsistent supply. These countries, like anywhere else, and I see even in our local supermarkets, there's one request. If I'm going to buy from you, when I stock my shelves every week, are you able to supply? And if that answer is no, then there's a challenge. My job here is to ensure that answer is yes. My job here is to ensure that you have all that it takes to make that answer yes. We can do it. Minister Evelyn made it very clear. We have some of the best soil in the world. We can do it. Our weather conditions allow for growing all year, not just partially. We can do it because we have some of the most innovative, some of the most intelligent, and some of the most hard-working people here in St. Kitts. But for far too long, there has not been a real drive with the political will to improve agriculture. And so over the last decade or more, agriculture has just been providing consistently somewhere around 10 to 15% of what we consume. Sorry, but I was a teacher. And anybody who brings me 10 to 15% was a failure. And so my job is to ensure that St. Kitts and Nevis exceeds and excels. And I know we can do it. And this time, we have to take a different approach. We have to do things a little bit different. We have to embrace innovation. We have to embrace the way forward. We have to harness the collective knowledge of our stakeholders on the ground, our stakeholders in the region, and our stakeholders internationally. We must do everything that we can to ensure that we bring all the resources, all the knowledge, all of the will, all the support, and centralize it, focus it, because $200 million is not impossible to achieve. Grenada produces $160+ million annually. Why can't we? I know we can. And with my commitment here, not only that we can, but we'll do everything to ensure that we will. Because food security, nutrition security is indeed a must for St. Kitts and Nevis. Because we could survive without a lot of things, but we cannot ever survive